Talk about justification. And so justification has two different sides, right? So this morning I used justification and almost used justification the wrong way. And I'll tell you what happened. So my daughter, my oldest daughter, will a lot of times wake up with me in the morning and go to the gym. And so this morning, I woke up, I went to go knock on her door, knowing that no matter how many times I agree that we're going to go to the gym at 5 a.m., we're going to leave the house at 4:50, she's never going to be awake, right? I'm always going to go wake her up. I'm like, hey, it's time to go to the gym. She'll get up, we'll go to the gym. She wants to go, she's happy after she's there, but she's just not great at waking up, as a lot of teenagers are when it's 4:50 in the morning, right?
Women.
And so I went and knocked on her door, and I intentionally asked the question in a soft way, right? I said, I'm going to go to the gym. Do you want to go? Instead of get up, let's go to the gym, I intentionally said, like, do you want to go? Knowing that she was going to be like, no. Because in that moment, she did not want to, right? I knew that. But I did it in a way to create room for me, a justification for me to not go to the gym. And I stepped away from that door and I realized that I was teaching a class on justification tonight. So I went to the gym. I even sent a picture to Andrew so he knew I was at the gym this morning. And then I got in my car and I went home, right? But justification is something very important, whether we acknowledge it or not. But it's something we can do negatively, and it's something that we can do positively. It's a tool, or it's something that will be to our detriment in the long term, right? And so the two different sides are, like, whenever we are making decisions, whether it's in relationships, business, personal life, like, there should be some kind of justification that goes back to obviously some of the societal ethics, but more importantly are your core values of who you are, who your company is, and why you're making those decisions. Okay. And when you're going at those problems and looking at it and deciding, like, does this meet all the pieces of my values before I make this decision, that's the good kind. Then there's the justification of, I'm not going to go to the gym this morning because my daughter didn't want to go, and I've got a lot going on, or, you know, I had a really busy day at work today. I still have a lot. I have more to do now at the end of the day than I did at the beginning of the day. So I'm just going to eat dinner with my family. Then I'm going to go to the office and I'm going to work, rather than sit down and hang out with them. You know, that's the wrong kind of justification, because I just justified myself out of time with my family, right? So those are the two parallels of justification that we're going to talk about tonight. And when we look at justification, like self-justification of what we do to guide decisions, and things like that, there's the piece where self-justification is you doing that introspective, and then there's the enemy of it, which is so internal justification versus external validation. Those two are competing forces in our minds. Because if I know that the best thing for my company is that we work late tonight so that we're ready for Monday, then that's not going to be the popular thing. The external validation is, I know the employees don't want to stay late tonight, so I'm going to let them go and we'll catch up on Monday morning, right? And I put myself on my heels when I go into that. I remember very specifically, when I was living in Japan, my unit, we formed a brand new unit, brought 280 Marines into one building, or not into 11 buildings, but like one unit. And we had all this equipment. They did water for the entire Pacific. So they would they could purify the ocean and make drinking water. They would run showers, laundry, bulk fuel, sewage, create electricity, create refrigeration. They could do all this. They were like a one-stop shop for anything utility or fuel related. And so a lot of their equipment overlapped, but you obviously can't use the water pump and the fuel pump, even though they're exactly the same. They're not interchangeable, apparently. I was not the expert on the function of the unit. I was in charge of leading the unit, right? But we brought them all together, and we did a ton after we first formed, because it was a brand new thing. Energy company is what it was called. Brand new thing, never existed in any branch of the military yet. And so we knew we had to play catch up, because every other unit in the Marine Corps has been around for a while, and they have multiple different wars and multiple different conflicts and operations that they've validated their procedures and what they do, their capabilities and everything. And so we decided we need to do with all these things and play catch up, because we don't have OIF 1, OIF Vietnam, World War II, all these things to validate how we do business. And so we spent a lot of time bringing leaders in at 5 o'clock in the morning to sit in meetings, so that when 7 o'clock came around and their Marines came back from PT, they'd go work for their Marines. And staying late at night to build the plans on how we were going to execute things and building this foundation. And it was not popular at all. As you can imagine, bringing senior leadership who have their routine, they're old crusty Marines that they wake up and they go run their 4 miles every morning and then go to the gym and do, they're set in their ways. They're drinking a cup of coffee, smoking a cigarette, running 3 miles. And that was just the way and bringing them into a meeting at 5 o'clock was not popular. But there was one Saturday where we got a phone call and said, hey, we need you guys to come together. We have a crisis in Hawaii that needs to be dealt with. And they had that big fuel crossover where fuel got in the water in Hawaii. And it was, shut down water sources out in the civilian population, and an entire base got shut down. They had no capability to do it. Well, we came in on that Saturday afternoon. They said, here's the problem, what do you have? And we already had, because of the time and the effort we put in, we already had lined out the options that were available. Here's how many gallons we can produce with this number of people and this much equipment. This is the type of aircraft it'll take to get there. And we just had all these things lined out because we had done the unpopular thing to be prepared. And the next day, that Sunday, we were loading Marines and equipment on an aircraft from Japan to go to Hawaii to provide water, shower, laundry services to families in Hawaii who otherwise would have just relied on laundry mats and things like that. But it was the unpopular thing, but ultimately it was justified. So that's why I talk about like the internal justification versus the external validation. Is sometimes the unpopular thing is the most just thing for you to do. Does that make sense? Okay. So what is justification, right? The defending voice. So when I look at if something's justified, the most simple lens to me, the one I've always had to lead by, is it unsafe? Is it unprofessional? Is it unethical? Is it illegal? And there's another somewhere. I just can't remember it right now. But I always had to look through those things. Like, is the actions we are taking as senior leadership, as individuals, is it ethical? Is it safe? If I don't check all those boxes, then we need to take a step back, compare the decision to our core values, to ethics, to morals, and decide, right? So I think of justification, like everybody believes in something, right? Whether it's that your light's going to turn on when you flip a switch, whether it's a higher power that is God. Everybody believes in something, which is faith, right? I have faith that when I turn on the switch in my bathroom, the light is going to come on. And that faith is based in justification. You have history and background to fill that in. And Paul in the Bible wrote that faith is justified. Never mind. We're going to leave that quote out because I can't remember the verse. I don't want to butcher it because it will be worse.
Yeah, it's the Bible. You can't
I don't want to mess it up. If it was anybody, if it was a Steve Jobs quote, I'll mess it up.
Paraphrasing.
But I can't mess up the Bible, right? I don't have enough saved up for that. I don't have enough grace for that. But we have faith, and that's where you have to lean on a lot of those times with justification. Is that your experiences, that your values, that you did the work on the front end to set those on a firm foundation, to be able to lean on those to create that justification on why you do certain things. And that justification is just a litmus test as you walk through life. Like, does this meet my priorities? Does this meet my intent? Does this meet God's intent? Does this meet the societal ethics? Like, I don't want to be ethically wrong to society, because my ethics or my values should be at a much more stringent level than what society's going to require of me. And so, at the bare minimum, if I can't meet societal ethics, then I'm way off base. And so I need to go back and restart from the beginning. And at the end of, if you look on your page, I put on there an acronym, kind of a litmus test that you can work through. So CLEAR is the acronym. It's on the back page at the bottom. So as you're looking at decisions and determining how justified something is, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm going to bounce around a little bit because I don't have my PowerPoint that is supposed to keep me on track. But is it consistent with my values, right? Is the justification aligned with my core beliefs, with the things I've set my foundation on, the guiding light that I have chosen, or that has been chosen for me? Is it logical reasoning? Does it make sense? Like that's the easy part. Is this common sense? Does this work? The empathetic impact, do you consider the others that it affects, right? And for some of you, this may not make a whole lot of sense, but as you become a parent, like, you will realize the impact that decisions make. And it's not, you don't realize it just because you get to see what decisions people are making that affect your children. You realize it because, like, I will say something to someone and be like, man, I would not want someone to say that to my kids, which means I shouldn't be saying it to anybody, right? Because that's the ultimate goal, is that I treat people the way I want my kids to be treated by those same people. I treat my wife the way I want my daughters to be treated by their husband one day. And so being empathetic to other people sounds way more simple than it is when it comes down to business and money's involved, and a position has to be filled for that day, but someone who had a scheduled day off, that decision gets much more difficult, and there's a lot of other contributing factors. But using this tool will help you work through that. Accountable. Are you willing to take responsibility for the outcome? If you're not, you shouldn't be making the decision. Firm and fair. If when it comes time and you go stand in front of your boss, or whether that's here on earth or somewhere else, that boss, you need to be willing to take accountability for your actions that you made. The decisions you made should be justified to the point where you're ready to say, oh, that was me, I mean, and they're reasonable. Would it still feel justified if it was a decision made by someone else? There's a lot of times where I've used that specific tool when dealing with some of my subordinate leaders, where they'd be like, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, all right, if I said that, how would you feel? Because I can make that same decision. You can go say, well, I'm going to take my 10, 15 Marines and we're going to go run 9 miles up this mountain every morning until everybody's scores have improved. And it's very easy for me to say, like, okay, well, I'm going to take my 280 Marines, which includes you, every morning to run 9 miles up this mountain until all level scores improve. How does that feel? And just using that thought process and that mentality to decide if someone else is making this decision, is it still a good idea, or is it something you would dread? Because it's very easy to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and you just think of the worst person you want to deal, like the person you don't want to deal with. If that person told me this is what we were doing, what would I say? And I always used to use I don't know if this is helpul to you guys, but I always used to use this in my decision making process, right? Because I had a counterpart, and we would make decisions together, and whenever we decided on a decision, we'd go behind closed doors and be like, all right, we have to go brief this now. We have to go say what this decision is, what our plan is, how we're going to execute this, and what it's going to cost. And then I would play devil's advocate to everything we decided on. I'm like, all right, you brief the decision. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to try to punch holes in every part of this decision. Because if it's not justified, then we don't need to be doing it. But that's the level of scrutiny that you can apply to determine if things are justified. And some decisions you make don't need that level of scrutiny, right? Some things are just very clear, right, wrong. But I think it's important to think about those things. And I think the most powerful tool we all possess is the ability to say our decisions and why we're making those decisions to another person. I don't know how many times I've gone up to someone and be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And as soon as I say the plan, I'm like, man, that's a terrible plan. I just never said it out loud. As soon as I said it out loud, I saw all the flaws. I saw what I could put myself in the other seat now and say, like, well, that's dumb. What about this and this? But saying it out loud, the spoken word is one of the biggest tools we have in decision making, in accountability, in so many aspects of our life. If I need to make sure that I'm considering a specific person whenever I make decisions, let me tell someone I need to consider that person. Because now when I make a decision, someone's gonna be like, did you consider that person? You know? Did you consider this person? It's like my dad, he's not here. He's hard of hearing, right? And if people don't know my dad is hard of hearing, then they don't take it, they don't think anything of it. But if I call my brothers and sisters who know that, and I say, hey, we're gonna go to dinner at this place, and it's a very loud restaurant, they're gonna be like, Dad's not gonna be able to hear anything, you know? You didn't take this consideration in. But you create those circles of people around you who are those sounding boards, who are the people who will put you in check, who are willing to say, this is wrong, or did you think about this? You know, I very rarely try to tell people that's wrong, right? Because that's not, I'm gonna catch less bees with that vinegar than I would if I just said, what did you think about this? What if this happened? You know? I try not to put people on the defensive when I'm checking them, but you need to put people in your life that will help you with that justification. Because especially in the business world and entrepreneurship, those decisions get made fast. You know, you may be coming out of a meeting with 5 minutes to spare before the next meeting starts, and someone walks up to you with a problem and expect an answer right then and there. And so it takes practice. It takes building a thought process and having tools and having people who are willing to say, we didn't consider this, you didn't consider this, to create an environment where people are willing to tell you. Because otherwise, it is solely on you in those 30 seconds to make that decision. And if you've put yourself in that position, you put yourself fighting on your heels, right? Does that make sense to you guys when I say fighting on your heels? Okay, for anybody who, okay. But that's not a position you want to be in. You empower the people around you, empower yourself by putting tools in place, like this acronym, working through it, practicing when the stakes aren't high, so that when they are high, you're ready. Build the plans now, so that when the opportunity arises for you to exercise those plans, you have them in place. Don't start from scratch when it comes. It's very easy for you guys to think through the problems your business is going to face ahead of time, right? You can Google list of problems business face. Go down the list. What am I going to do in this situation? What is the justifiable decision? If I was working for a company, what decision would I want them to make if they got sued? You know, you can go down those lists and come up with those processes and those thoughts before it's time, and you're the one fighting from a position of like, I have to make a decision now. It's very easy. We call it war gaming. It's very easy to war game those decisions because the problems exist. They're similar across every company. Go on there, look them up, pick one, think through it. Think through it on your way to work. Get AI, talk to AI, say, hey, what do I do with this problem? I'm going to do this. Let AI play devil's advocate for you. Or call a friend, say, hey, this is a decision I'm wanting to make. What do you think? Right? Don't surround yourself with yes men, obviously, because they're not going to give you the answer you want. But building out those executable plans ahead of time will save you a lot of heartache later. So now, when justification, what's that?
Well, I said I married that person.
Yeah.
It's like an honest feedback. I can say,
Yeah.
hey, this is what I'm thinking. She'll tell me straight.
Yeah, my wife will too. Yeah. And she won't mince a word.
Yeah. Which we need it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of problems I don't bring to her because
I ain't saying that.
Yeah, I'm not telling her that. Yeah, I had one of those yesterday come up. I was talking to someone. I said, my wife's like, "You didn't tell me that." I'm like, I bet I didn't. I bet I didn't. So when justification is the trap, when you start seeing justifications become excuses, when you're explaining why you did not do something and using a justification for why you did not do something, that's when it's a trap. You can just, like I always used to tell my Marines, like you can use any excuse you want as long as you're weak enough to use it. Because they would come in with the most bizarre things, and sure, in their mind that was justifiable.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly have a hard time holding someone, like holding anything against someone. I'll hold people accountable. I don't hold it against them, right? If someone as an adult and they felt that their decision was important enough for them to make, that they were willing to risk their career, who am I to judge them? I'll hold them accountable. That's my job. Someone else, God can judge them, right? My job's hold them accountable, fix the problem. But they would come with these excuses, and you could hear like the desperation for it to sound good, right? Like, man, I really need this excuse to work. This has got to be valid. You start hearing statements end in question marks, and I was late because my daughter was sick, you know, and that is the justification that will eat you up, because it becomes a habit, and it's a very easy snowball effect that can build and build and build, where your go-to is to start with an excuse, right? We've talked a lot over the past few months about responding to someone versus reacting to someone. Excuses are a simple form of a reaction, right? I'm reacting to this in the form of an excuse rather than respond with a valid justification or an admittance of guilt, whatever the guilt may be, right? In fear-based reasoning, justification a lot of times is based in fear or ego. That you come up with an excuse rather than saying, like, you know what, I dropped the ball. You come up with some justification. I was so busy, I didn't do it. I had an hour and a half lunch, but I didn't get this done because I was so busy. You know, overthinking decisions. So, good decision now is better than a perfect decision too late. I've seen a lot of times where people wanted to perfect a decision to get it 100% right, and by the time they made the decision, they missed the mark. It was too late. And there's businesses left and right have done this. You see Kodak did that exact same thing. They didn't want to lose their market share in creating and printing film. They thought nobody's ever going to want to look at pictures on a screen. Missed the mark. BlackBerry, nobody's ever going to want to type on a screen. They like the keyboard. They like the feel of a keyboard. Missed the mark. Time and time again, people justify out of fear. They don't want to get out of their comfort zone. And so they justify something and miss an opportunity, or just make an excuse for what they're doing. Avoiding responsibility, another justification. That's someone else's job, right? You saw the problem, you didn't do anything about it. Someone else is responsible for that. I didn't know I was responsible for that. And then seeking unnecessary validation. If you're seeking validation for your decisions, not to talk out of both sides of my mouth, because we did talk about how you take decisions and run them by people, trusted individuals, your confidants, and the people that are going to give you the trusted feedback. But when you start validating it, like, hey, what did everybody think of that? How did that decision sound? Then you probably didn't put enough effort into making sure that decision was justified. You're trying to justify something after the decision is made rather than before.
Use these.
Yep, you use those. Go through them. And so, I have a ton of acronyms, and you guys will go through them, and
What, just in time?
you're just in time.
Awesome.
She's gone?
Yeah.
She didn't say bye.
No, she sure didn't. She's rude like that.
Yeah.
She actually didn't even want to say hi, really, but I made her.
But these acronyms are just a foundation, right? You're going to come up with your own methods and the things that work for you, but they're just to help you come up with something, right? Help you have something to apply until you have built the routine. And if you work through that acronym enough times, eventually it's going to go away, and your mind is just going to run through those processes.
Like when you have a tough decision to make, or you have to make a decision, you have to pick between one or the other, use this kind of as a template to help make that decision.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
got work to do. Do I go on the computer to do work, or do I spend the last 2 hours with my fiance?
Yeah.
You know, and you go through it.
So let me ask you guys this. And George can cut this out later. So I have spent years and years and years in what's called the Marine Corps planning process, MCPP, okay? and it is a terrible name. Right? Terrible name. The other one is the rapid response planning process, which is R2P2. We're good at that. This is off track. The worst acronym I ever saw was Marine Corps Marine Corps Installation Specific, which is Mickey Pack. And then they had a unit inside of Mickey Pack, which is the Individual Personnel Administration Center. So it was literally, which was called IPAC. So the acronym was literally Mickey Packy Pack. So we were terrible with them, but we had the Marine Corps planning process, which is a very in-depth planning process that I can't help but utilize in decisions I make now. It goes all the way from problem framing, like framing the problem, what it is I'm trying to decision needs to be made, what the problem actually is, all the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, threats, the enemy's most likely course of action, the enemy's most dangerous course, like breaks it all down, and then moves into like the COA development. Like, here, let me come up with the multiple different plans that we can take, so that we can take those plans and go into wargaming, where we actually think through each of these plans and how it would go. Now, I have taught that material for years and years and years. If you guys would be interested in learning it, I love teaching it because it's something I utilize outside of the military. I think it is a foolproof. It says every step has an output. Like, out of this step, I should have these decisions made. I should know this information before I go into the next step, because it's just the input for the next step. I could teach that sometime if you guys are interested. Problem is, it's super, super dry. It is super dry. I nerd out on it hardcore, but you guys think on it, don't make a decision now. Trust me, don't make a decision now. But I'd like to, at some point, at least offer it to some people to come learn, because it is a foolproof planning process. Now, back to justification. Justification is like, it's one of those things that we don't ever think about, right? It's not one of those things we walk around like, are my decisions going to be justified today? You know, you worry about specific problems, but if you put time and effort into developing how you process and build your justifications and the foundations that those justifications are built on, then you will be better prepared to make those decisions on the fly. And some of them, sometimes it just eliminates decisions that have to be made. If you work through and build the foundation, say, these are my company's values, these are the guiding light for my company, a lot of times that will eliminate decisions. You know, if you look at companies like Patagonia, their vision is, how do we make the most environmentally stable, friendly clothing line, right? All the way from where is the fabric sourced, to where it's made, to how recyclable it is, to the recycling program specifically for their clothes. How do we make it the most environmentally sustainable and friendly clothing line possible? When they put that guiding light out there, it removed thousands of decisions they have to make, right? Because they no longer have to say, like, hey, that's a cheaper option, should we use that? No, because it is not the most environmentally friendly option. And so when you build your values and your foundation of your organization and why you do certain things, oftentimes it will remove some of those decisions that you would later have to be faced with, because they're not an option. They don't pass the test based off of the values you outlined. Does that make sense? So, all right.